Hello, everybody. It's Books and Looks TV. So, on my channel, I do deep dives on media in various forms, and I also talk about trending social media topics. Today, I'm going to be talking about Greenleaf and how desirability, colorism, and morality all play into this mega church family. So, if you want a deep analysis and you've seen the show or you don't mind spoilers, make sure you stay tuned. Greenleaf has emerged as a significant cultural text, offering a compelling family drama intertwined with a sharp critique of faith, power, and systemic hypocrisy within a Black megachurch. Within its layered narratives, the series unflinchingly grapples with colorism, the preferential treatment or discrimination based on skin tone, and its profound impact on identity and desirability. This issue is starkly evident in the contrasting depictions of Sisters Grace, known as Gigi Greenleaf, and Charity Greenleaf, whose experiences mirror broader societal biases and raise critical questions about representation of Black women in media. The portrayal of a light-skinned eldest daughter, often positioned as morally superior or a savior, alongside a darker-skinned younger sister depicted with more subpar qualities, reflects and reinforces real-world biases that have historically marginalized darker-skinned Black women. At its core, Greenleaf interrogates the uncomfortable dissonance between a public image of morality and the private realities of sin. With the Greenleaf family embodying this tension perfectly, the megachurch setting in Greenleaf is not merely a backdrop. It amplifies the impact of colorism and patriarchy. These large, often personality-driven institutions can become fertile ground for the politics of respectability to thrive, where external appearances, including skin tone and body type, become intertwined with perceived spiritual worth and moral authority. As Black feminist theorist Bell Hooks articulated, the politics of respectability demands that Black people maintain an almost unattainable level of perfection as a defense against systemic racism. The Greenleaf family, particularly its women, are pressured to embody this concept, performing beauty, morality, and subservience. Both Grace and Charity's narratives are deeply shaped by these expectations, as they navigate a patriarchal and colorist system that unequivocally prioritizes lighter skin, slimmer figures, and compliant femininity. Grace Greenleaf, powerfully portrayed by Merle Dandridge, often serves as the show's moral compass. Her light skin, slim physique, and refined features immediately position her as a beacon of competence and desirability. Grace is consistently depicted as the one who confronts institutional corruption and unravels insidious family secrets, often placing her at odds with her family and the very church they lead. This largely stems from her decision to flee Memphis after her Uncle Mac's assault on Faith, which tragically led to Faith's suicide. Grace's light skin and perceived beauty are not just aesthetic, they function as tools that amplify her authority, solidifying her as a natural leader. She is the whistleblower who bravely exposes her Uncle Mac's sexual abuse, effectively challenging a deeply entrenched culture of silence within the family. Her physical appearance and composure often afford her an almost automatic legitimacy, aligning her with what feminist scholar Patricia Hill Collins refers to as the outsider within, a person who can critique oppressive systems while still benefiting from certain privileges. Grace's romantic entanglements, particularly with Noah, further underscore her desirability, portraying her as someone who effortlessly commands respect and love. And I know Grace had a lot on her plate, don't get me wrong, but I just thought it was interesting in the show how Grace, she wasn't perfect. She was doing a thing with her man or whatever, but it was just interesting how Charity was doing something similar, but she was portrayed in a heightened way. What truly stands out, however, is her father's consistent attempt to position her as his successor to quote unquote clean up his act. It's ironic given that Grace often admits her relationship with God is unclear, and while she strives for justice, she does not carry the tainted reputation of her family who stayed in Memphis. This decision is particularly striking because, in the context of a traditional church, a prominent leadership role like a successor would unequivocally demand a proven, deep, and consistent commitment to faith, as well as a history of dedicated service within the ministry. Grace's long absence from the church, a period marked by her personal struggles and admitted spiritual uncertainty, would, in a conventional setting, be significant disqualifiers. Like, people gonna say, look, are you saved or are you not saved? What you mean, whoop de whoop de whoop. Like, in general, I would see Grace go to the pulpit and say she wasn't perfect and she's building her connection with God, which is great. But you just don't see people, again, who are supposed to be a successor doing that. Nonetheless, A palpable sense of family favoritism emerges here. Charity, in stark contrast, has always shown unwavering commitment and dedication to the church, serving faithfully in ministry for a much longer period. She has deeper roots within the ministry and consistently expressed a desire to be her father's successor. However, he repeatedly refuses, insisting she remains in the music ministry. Often her instability and frankly her naivety regarding men contribute to her being seen as untrustworthy. And I was really upset when she let that preacher play her, but I might talk about that later. Anyway, Charity is undeniably beautiful. She has flawless skin, her hair is on point, she dresses well, she has this charisma, but she's still depicted as insecure, always chasing a man and trying to prove herself. But let's get back to Grace. Despite her influential role, her independence and unwavering moral conviction often isolate her as well. It's crucial to acknowledge that Grace's light-skin privilege does not exempt her from the patriarchal constraints and ethical dilemmas inherent in the Greenleaf family and the church. The immense pressure to be the quote-unquote savior also stems from external pressures on Black families to maintain a flawless image for a broader, often white gaze. Her quote-unquote light-skinned savior role, while seemingly empowering to some people, at least the audience of the church perhaps, places an immense burden on her, forcing her to confront deep-seated corruption at a great personal cost. And if y'all seen the show, you know it was a lot of corruption. Nonetheless, despite her desire for a good relationship with her family, her self-righteousness strains her bonds, especially with Charity, whose simmering resentment underscores Grace's inherent privilege often bestowed by their parents. Grace's beauty, including that of her light skin, are implicitly tied to her role as the family's light-skinned savior, subtly perpetuating a harmful association between physical attributes and worthiness. And I also think it was strange that in real life, this actress is bi-ethnic. And I believe on the show, they were like, oh, you know, the pastor isn't really your father. Okay, but it's just weird because, again, a lot of times in these roles, like I talked about in other videos about the light-skinned eldest daughter trope, they're not even monoracial Blacks, but they're often put in Black families. And I'm not saying light-skinned people don't exist in Black families, but they're getting mixed people to play Black in Black families. Let's get to Charity. So, Charity Greenleaf is portrayed by Deborah Joy Winans, and she offers a powerful counterpoint to Grace. Her storylines frequently highlight her vulnerability and insecurity, mirroring broader societal biases that devalue women who do not conform to Eurocentric beauty standards. In season 1, Charity's marriage to Kevin Satterlee is tragically marred by his struggle with his sexuality, and their argument over his deception led to Charity losing one of the twin boys she was carrying.
Season 1, Charity left off in a space of confusion, hurt, pain. She had just found out her husband, the love of her life, hadn't cheated on her, but was having feelings towards other men, and she's pregnant with twins while she finds this out. And so that causes a lot of stress on her, on the babies, and just puts her in a state of confusion and wondering if she ever had what she thought she had.
Later, after their divorce, Kevin began dating a Greenleaf family friend, Erin Jeffries. Missy. Charity is consistently depicted as a deeply passionate and incredibly talented worship leader. Her profound musical abilities and unwavering devotion to her faith underscore her desperate desire to carve out a space for herself within a family that more often than not sidelines her. At her best, Charity embodies resilience, navigating a world that often dismisses her inherent value. However, her consistent ability to bounce back despite repeated betrayals also implicitly ties into the strong Black woman trope, demanding her to endure silently and without visible cracks, even as she is punished by the narrative. Despite her talents, Charity is frequently portrayed as emotionally unstable and often desperate. Her darker skin and fuller figure, unfortunately, become symbols of her perceived inadequacy, aligning her with harmful stereotypes about desirability and competence. This is most tragically evident in her romantic relationships, where she faces repeated rejection and betrayal. So Kevin, he is the betrayal of her husband's hidden sexuality, coupled with the loss of her twin. This is her husband, the root of all her problems, and her emotional, I won't say all her problems, but this plays a deepened wound on her in the show. And this emotional turmoil is like inherent to her instability as a deeply understandable reaction to immense trauma. Yet the narrative often depicts her as simply irrational and messy, with her legitimate cries for help or frequently overlooked. Her struggles and relationships are often framed as a consequence of her own flawed character, rather than the ongoing impact of this devastating foundation. Next up is Jabari. Her relationship with that music producer initially offers her a glimmer of validation. That girl giggling, kicking her feet up, doing the most. Yet Jabari's ultimate treatment of Charity as expendable underscores her persistent struggles to find genuine love and respect. Charity's ill-fated involvement with Phil as a manipulative church leader further illustrates her deep vulnerability. This relationship represents the painful totality of Charity's desperation for validation, as she betrays her own family in an attempt to secure love and power, only to be discarded once again. And ironically, his love interest was a white woman. Like, he literally was married to a slim white woman. So I just thought that was also a slap in the face to Charity and like what Black men a lot of times really want. Crucially, while both Grace and Charity engage in extramarital relationships throughout the series, the narrative often painted Charity as more promiscuous or morally inherent of her actions. This stark double standard highlights how similar moral failings are judged differently based on a character's overall portrayal, reinforcing the idea that Charity's struggles are a consequence of her own perceived moral shortcomings rather than systemic biases. Furthermore, Charity's emotional struggles are often heightened by the immense pressure of managing motherhood, particularly with her baby after Kevin's departure. This period often coincides with the emotional intensity of postpartum depression, a very real condition that the show largely fails to acknowledge as a legitimate factor in her perceived instability. Instead, her pain is presented as a part of her general messiness, contrasting sharply with Grace's more contained and rational emotional responses. Charity's narrative powerfully reflects what sociologist Macmillan Cotton describes as thick, a term used to analyze how Black women's bodies are disproportionately burdened with societal biases. Her physical attributes, her darker skin, and plus-size figure become markers of her marginalization, consistently limiting her agency and reinforcing the damaging idea that she is less deserving of love and respect. As a darker-skinned and plus-size sister, Charity constantly struggles for recognition and validation within her family and the church, and not to mention she's the baby of the family. Grace's lighter skin and slim build align her with pervasive societal ideals of beauty and competence, granting her greater authority and desirability within this narrative. In sharp contrast, Charity's darker skin complexion and fuller figure render her less visible and less valued both within her family and the broader community. This dynamic is particularly evident in the often strained relationship between Charity and Lady May, the formidable Greenleaf matriarch who ideally happens to be lighter skinned and married to a dark skinned man. Lady May's consistently dismissive treatment of Charity reflects what Black feminist theorist Kimberly Crenshaw describes as intersectionality, the compounded discrimination faced by individuals who occupy multiple marginalized identities. Charity's experience as a dark-skinned, plus-size woman powerfully illustrate how these intersecting biases operate within families and institutions, constantly undermining her efforts to assert herself. Charity's desperation for validation is a heart-wrenching and recurring theme throughout Greenleaf. Her palpable jealousy of Grace clearly highlights the privileges afforded to lighter-skinned women. This jealousy is often depicted as a negative characteristic, painting Charity as petty or resentful. This sharp contrast is amplified by Grace's own narrative, where she is portrayed as primarily seeking justice for her sister Faith, seemingly free of personal ambition or desire for conflict. This framing further paints Charity in a negative light, as someone whose emotional turmoil detracts from her potential. While Grace remains the noble, problem-solving protagonist, Charity's often poor decision-making tragically underscores the intense societal pressures that drive darker-skinned women to seek affirmation in unhealthy ways. Charity's desperation for validation is not just a character flaw. It is an important reflection of the internalized colorism that often affects darker-skinned women, leading them to seek external affirmation in a world that consistently devalues them. Charity reflects the profound psychological toll of invisibility, a concept powerfully explored by feminist writer Audre Lorde, where she discusses how societal erasure of Black women's value leads to self-doubt and ultimately harmful behaviors. While Greenleaf undeniably succeeds in shedding much-needed light on issues of faith and hypocrisy, its reinforcement of colorism and body image biases warrants significant critique. Grace's light skin and beauty consistently position her as the family savior, while Charity's darker complexion and fuller figure render her vulnerable and frankly unworthy in the show's narrative. These portrayals unfortunately mirror real-world dynamics. It is important to note that while Greenleaf unflinchingly depicts colorism and its effects, the show rarely explicitly names or directly critiques this specific bias within its dialogue or overarching narrative. This leaves a critical interpretation largely to the audience, potentially softening the impact of its social commentary. Beyond the obvious colorism at play, what is fascinating is how the Black men in power within the Greenleaf family are the ones who create and sustain the family's sins, be it investment fraud or the abuse of clergy power. The patriarchal structures within the Greenleaf family, largely upheld by the male leaders, not only sustain the family's corruption, but also implicitly and sometimes explicitly reinforce colorist beauty standards. The male gaze within the church and family dynamics. Yet, it is the women of the family who are consistently expected to clean up the mess. They are still daughters living under their parents' roofs, desperately trying to gain their affection, and in this pursuit, they are often utilized for their labor, whether it is their beauty capital, charisma, or vocal talent. Through the contrasting, often painful portrayals of Grace and Charity Greenleaf, Greenleaf undeniably offers a profound commentary on colorism, desirability, and family favoritism. However, the show also perhaps inadvertently perpetuates these harmful stereotypes, underscoring the urgent need for more nuance and equitable representation of Black women in media. Moving forward, a truly equitable representation would challenge these ingrained biases by showcasing the multifaceted beauty and strength of all Black women, irrespective of skin tone or body type. It would allow characters like Charity to find genuine love and success without constant humiliation, and characters like Grace to wield influence not solely based on appearance, but on innate talent and morality. And I do respect that Grace was focused on justice for her sister and generally did want to do the right thing. We're not going to ignore her privileges. So I would like to know now what you all think about Greenleaf. Did you like it? Do you agree or disagree with anything? If so, what is it? Thank you so much for listening to Books and Looks TV. I'll see y'all next time.